Hey everyone, this is an exercise I like to call 5-2-1-30, and it's a way to loosen up before you get drawing, kind of a great way to add to your sketchbook or create studies of something that you're learning anew. The whole process takes about 12 to 15 minutes, so it's not a huge time commitment, but it does give you a big boost to your creative work. Now, I like to start this out with some type of color pencil. Blue is my go-to, but you can use red, purple, orange, green, whatever you want. And the reason that I do that is that it gives you the freedom to make any line that you want because you're using a different color. Construction marks or any hash marks or gestural lines or any sort of decision making that you're doing on paper can stay with the color, so that when your final sketch on top that you can choose the best lines with that color, whether you're doing a pen on top or a pencil or another color, then you're both capturing the energy of your initial sketch, but then that's something that you can remove digitally later or push to the background when you put a stronger color on top of it. So we're going to start out with a skull, which I'll pop up into the corner. And this is a medical illustration class, and that includes veterinary and other types of animal life other than humans. So we are starting with something a little more unfamiliar just to keep us a little more focused on the task at hand. So we're looking at a silver-haired bat. They're native to Wisconsin, adorable, and yeah, let's go. All right, so we're gonna set our 5-minute timer, and 5 minutes is quite a long time, longer than you'd think. But the first thing you wanna do is get just the general bean shape of this particular skull down on paper, and we can start to hash out some of the angles that we're looking for. So that downward slope where the teeth are, the eyeball sits in the first about third. So we divide our bean in thirds. That eyeball is sitting smack dab on that number 3 line, or that first of the third. And the zygomatic arch is coming across kind of in between these two approximate marks. And there's a little bit of a tip here that's about the halfway point from the front to the back of the skull. And these, by construction lines, I kind of mean all these sort of gestural decision-making lines that we're seeing. We have our brain case, kind of a round section here with a flat part at the back, ridge for connecting neck muscles, very large ear hole just behind that third division, and then kind of a swoop of the lower jaw. It swoops up to this front angled section here. Upper and lower canines. Lower canines are always in front of the upper for something that has overlapping teeth like this. Move our eye line up a little bit. Let's see. So this front part of the orbit sort of fades into the rest of the skull here. We have a little bit of dupe for the nose, but overall the top of the skull is relatively flat until we arch up around this brain box. Very sharp hook here. And this section around the back of the mandible is part of where it's arching up underneath this zygomatic arch. A lot of muscle attachment points here. But you can kind of look at the whole shape of it. It's roughly triangular with this little angular process sticking out here. The body of the mandible is fairly even until it jogs down here for the chin. How many teeth do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. And kind of divide out your teeth sections here. Measure out where your little molars are going to be. And so the orbits are just where the eyeball is resting. It's not physical holes in the skull, even though it may seem that way in some animals. So we're at about 1 minute 51. So we do have some time to keep putting in some of these little kind of wrinkly details. processes at the back here. Oh, let's get some shape on here. So the ear, these kind of balloon-like structures around there, the tympanic bulla. The little bone that you see jutting down here is part of the hyoid, so we'll leave it off of the skull since we're just looking at the skull proper. And we can start to define and darken some of these structures that are coming more forward in our view, just so that they have a bit more presence and have that illusion of depth. And then strengthen the outer border as well. A little more closely at the teeth. Ugh. These guys are kind of funny because they have split incisors. They have a big gap in the front of their skull. Maybe part of their insectivorous habit. About 15 seconds. All right. That gives us a pretty good approximation of a bat skull. And that's our 5 minutes. I always like to label these, then you can keep track of how things are developing over time. So we'll reset a 2-minute timer and do the exact same thing. So what we're doing now is going to be distilling some of this information. Let's start our 2-minute timer. So we're both looking at the drawing that we just made and our specimen. So start similarly with our potato. The 3 divisions seem to work well just for getting our proportions set. But we're going to work a little faster this time. We hump at that 3rd division. Get some of how, do a little time saving by checking out the proportions of our original drawing. And what we're doing is we're distilling that information. So we've done some decision making already with our first rendering, our first try, and we don't have to make all those, we don't have to rehash that in the exact same way. We can just cut straight to the chase. Maybe simplify the teeth into some little jaggedy bits, which is just fine for our purposes. Again, sketching, the whole point of a sketch is to get to know your subject. About 40 seconds left. Yeah. Add a little shadow then. The shadow is slightly artificial because it's like, and it's not a deep cavernous hole. They've got shallow little eyeballs, but they can give some of that intentionality to our skull. Strengthen some of those forward lines again. And that's 2 minutes. All right, reset, 1 minute. And so we're not trying to speed draw. This is not, the point is not to draw fast, the point is to distill. And if you're trying to get to know something or learn it, drawing many versions of it is the best way to really wrap your mind and your pencil around these types of things. So 1 minute, distill it down. What are the clearest lines? What are the fewest lines that we can make to say bat skull at this particular point? And so we like that zygomatic arch. That seems to be working well for us here. little teethers. One for that brain case, angled line at the back of the skull, ridge for muscle attachment, very clear ear hole here. And some of those teeth. All right, that gets us 1 minute. Maybe a little more because I forgot to look at the clock. All right. And lastly, 30 seconds is like lightning round. Literally what is the fewest possible lines to get this shape across and get it down on paper. Just let your pencil fly. We're making an icon of this, or like a logo, distilling it down to its simplest elements. So, eyeball, little fangs. Scoop that chin. Yeah. Get our tympanic bulla here. Flat-ish skull except for that bump at the back. They keep all their brains. All right, there we go. So there is our 30-second skull. And again, the point is not to go fast. The point is to let go. We need to let go of the preciousness of what we're putting down on paper, have some quick sketches, some flying things, some funny sketches, because it breaks down kind of that inhibition of drawing. We want to put stuff down on paper no matter what, because then we'll have something to work with. If we always wait until we know we're ready to make the perfect line, we're never going to make a single thing. So getting stuff down on paper, 5, 2, 1, 30. And I do like to follow this up with another 2 minutes on any one of these drawings. So set your 2-minute timer one more time. Reset. And choose one of these to continue working on, looking at your specimen, looking at your other drawings, and add using a different color, whether it's a pen, whether it's a pencil, whether it's a different color pencil. You can get some nice 2-layer drawings that way. We're going to set just 2 minutes to give ourselves time to really work back into these. You can choose your favorite lines, highlight them. Try not to erase in any of this. All of this is sketching. Sketching is learning, and if you erase to try and minimize the evidence of your learning, you're kind of undoing all that you're working towards. The sketchbook is where you make decisions, and that is perfectly fine. When we're done with this 2-minute follow-up, I'm going to show the skull just to show some cool little things about it, because that makes me happy. That's about a minute. All right. Oh, we got 20 more seconds. All right. Again, even with this reworking, we can still see the energy of that initial pass, which I rather like. We get that little detail in there. Alrighty. So then I'll add that 2 minutes in a different color. And there you go. 5, 2, 1, 30. parentheses 2. You can also use that 2 minutes to change the direction of the skull or, you know, whatever object you're drawing, and get it from a new perspective to get a more three-dimensional understanding of the object. And I found that's a really great way both to fill a sketchbook, to keep your pencil moving, and to just kind of add to your inspiration in a very low maintenance or low stakes sort of way. There you go. Have fun. All right, as promised, I do want to show you the actual specimen. So you can see it a little better in front of the paper. But this is a Lasionycterus noctivagans, the silver-haired bat. But it is printed way bigger. The whole animal itself is about this long, and the skull would be about this big. But there's a wonderful artist online who prints 3D replicas of CT scans, micro CT scans of these animals. And I'll put the link in the description. Strange specimens. She's super cool. So it's really great to be able to see these teeny tiny skulls close up. And something interesting to notice for this little guy is, one, the giant gap. So there's a big gap tooth fella. Could potentially have to do with the insectivorous diet, if that's maybe a way to help grab onto their prey. But then also, I'd like to point out, not all bats are the same, of course. So this guy's a fruit-eating bat, and something great to notice between similarly sized printed skulls, I believe the fruit bat is physically bigger than the silver-haired, but, you know, prints, is to notice just the relative difference between the ear bubbles, or the tympanic bulla. These are printed incompletely just because of, you know, the printing process, I guess. But because it's from a CT scan, you can see the inner ear structure, so the inner ear chamber, and then this other chamber of the tympanic bulla, which is pretty cool. But relatively, an insectivorous bat has a much larger structure for their ear and hearing apparatus than a fruit-eating bat, which does not use their ears to hear their prey at all, because fruit does not make that much sound. So yeah, cool 3D printed skulls, 2 different bats, little nerds. It's great.